Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 626, Disaster Dropping. March 1st, 2021. It's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norp. Thanks for joining us. Are the premises put forth by Malcolm Gladwell and the Tipping Point completely wrong? A research paper out this past week claims exactly that. And if it's true, it could affect all of our concepts of influencer marketing. So tonight, we'll discuss. Also unpacking Clubhouse's privacy issues, Twitter's new super follower feature, the Potato Head family goes gender neutral, plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the Vice President, Head of Marketing Services for IWCO Direct, Mr. Ted Aurelius. Ted, how are you?
Good, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now, next, we welcome back noted global brand strategist and keynote speaker, Ms. Rose Cameron. Rose, so glad to have you back.
Bob, it's so great to be back.
Now, also joining us, we have the founder and principal consultant at the Idea Integration Company, Mr. Saul Colt. Hi, Saul.
Hey, Bob. Thank you for having me on the show.
My pleasure. And finally, he's the founder at Future Fourth and chief nice maker on nicemaker.com, author, speaker, keynote speaker, Mr. Dave Delaney. Dave, hi. I royally screwed up your introduction, but I tried really, really hard.
It's all good. I'm just glad to be here.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to start off with a really interesting study. I'm not sure I believe it, but that's why I have you people to talk to about it. You have to be suspect of a study that claims nearly everything about Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point is wrong, but so goes the claim by lead author, UCLA sociology professor Gabriel Rossman. Now, in a paper that shows well-targeted ads are just as effective at causing viral phenomenon as tapping central influencers within a community, that's a pretty revolutionary statement considering everybody in this industry considers influencer marketing to be the kind of gold standard for how to create viral phenomenon. Rose, what do you think of this research, and does this affect the recommendations you make to your clients going forward as a result of this? Does it affect anything?
Not really.
Why is that?
Because you're making the assumption that I supported Malcolm Gladwell, which I didn't.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, and so when I looked at this research, there was a quote. I went in and I actually read the research report because I'm geeky that way, and my degree is in sociology and cultural anthropology. So I was like, "Hey, compadre!" So he said, most people adopt based on influence from numerous minor opinion leaders of purely local influence, who in turn got information from mass media. Okay, so I don't think he's saying influencers are dead. What he's saying is, it's like what your mother said to you, Bob. Bob, if Sharon told you to jump off that cliff, would you jump off the cliff? And you'd probably say no. But if several people from your village are running towards the cliff and screaming, the volcano behind us is erupting, you're sure the hell going to jump off the cliff.
Right.
So I think that that's essentially what he's saying, and if we look at celebrity and where celebrity's gone to with regards to their influence in areas like sport, you can say there has been a constant kind of erosion of an individual influencer having this major impact. But what we're definitely seeing in the times of COVID is that communal local influence is growing. And if they hear something that has validity and credibility, and they say that is valid, others will listen. So, I think more in a kind of hive mentality with regards informants versus a uber powerful singular individual. And, of course, the advertising, informed advertising, credible advertising, great advertising is going to have influence on that.
I agree with you 100%. And I'll hold my comments because I know Saul's chomping at the bit to get in there. So go for it, Saul.
Also, finally, a topic I'm an expert at. You always give me the programmatic advertising questions. As the foremost expert on word of mouth and creating these so-called viral experiences, I can tell you for a fact that, and I mean when I say fact, you could take this to the bank. The tipping point has always been wrong. So I agree a lot with what Rose said, but I'm going to say it with a Canadian accent. I've been saying for so long that the tipping point has been wrong that people have told me that I'm going to ruin Malcolm Gladwell's self-esteem. And here's
please.
Yeah, here's what he in the study probably gets wrong. I didn't read these studies, so I'm going to guess that, this is what they said. But the thing that none of these, so-called, studies take into account is that 93% of all word of mouth happens offline. And my understanding is that, all of these surveys are only measuring online sources. Beyond that, GLADS, as I call them, said vitality starts with the most popular person in any equation. And what people took from that is you needed to give money to people like the Kardashians, even if they weren't targeted. Guy Kawasaki got even richer because through easy money that people threw at him because he was a tech guy with a big following, and people just always assume that that's where you go. But this is where, the thing was that he didn't fall into the trust bubble, and that's what you need for real influence, and that's what you need for virality. I do a whole 90-minute keynote on how influencers are visible, but nobody really knows what an influencer is. I'm not going to do it all here, but a real influencer is someone who already loves your product and would tell people without money. They have targeted followings, big or small, and the combination of them shouting coupled with a great creative idea, not to shut out, combination of them shouting with a great idea, as well as coupled with a little paid promotion, is how it all starts. Everybody, it sounds like the survey is saying, oh my God, you have to light a match to start these things. You absolutely have to light a match to start with these things. That is not new, and that shouldn't be a surprise with any of these things. But ads alone don't have that KLT element, the clit element, as I said once on stage and got fired, because clit is kind of like a sexual innuendo. But the KLT, the know, like, trust, is how you get things to spread. A great ad on its own can spread. Absolutely. We've seen that from Super Bowl. But how many brands actually make great ads anymore? Mm-hmm. The targeted influence who isn't famous but passionate is a much easier mountain to climb, and it's repeatable till the end of time. And you can run 100 of these simultaneously with as many targeted influencers as you can find, as many influencers as you can find, focusing on different segment groups. So the thing that people always get wrong here is throw money at the biggest, shiniest person and sit back and put your feet up on the chair. Influencers work if you do it properly, but for the most of the time, people don't really understand what it is about influencers that connect with people, and they don't believe that somebody with a small but hyper-targeted following can be the same as somebody with 250, 300,000 untargeted followers. Thank you.
I think it's Dave's turn to weigh in here. I would love to get your thoughts on this, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, all great points. I think the article sort of makes the argument to combine influencer outreach.
Yes, I read it the same way. I read it the same way, that that advertising is just as effective as the influencer in sparking this viral phenomenon, but that together they work together really, really well. That's what I took away.
Really disprove or totally poo-poo Gladwell's theory. It just really, it made that point. One thing I noticed that I was curious about from the data set, and maybe Rose can explain better, because I looked at it and I was a little confused, but it looked like the data sets were from 2002, 2011, and 2016, if I understood that correctly.
Correct.
And 2016 was a long time ago when we think of digital, right? And nowadays, marketing mediums are becoming oversaturated with ads. Attention spans are diminishing. Trust in paid ads is decreasing. Users are turning to ad blockers, and click farms and bots are all on the rise. And so conversion rates are decreasing through that. So I wonder how valid this study would be, using current metrics or current data sets that are, more timely. I'm not really sure. And by the way, that was a quote from a ad article that I read a while back.
Yeah. To that point, Dave, I think that everything kind of needs to be reassessed and new baselines created as of, last year. COVID's kind of thrown everything up in the air the same way 2008 did with a lot of our baselines, right? So, but I think what he got his hands on, the sociologist who did this, was he got his hands on real data that he knew was of networks that he could play around with, right? That was, non-volatile. And that's why he used it from those periods of time. So he was just looking for dependable network data, as it were. But I agree. I think we're going to see percentiles of difference in this. I think we're going to see increases in the power of the local to influence right now. And the more we've seen a lot of this in representations of like the Miley Cyruses of this world, who are, promoting viewpoints, etc., from their beautiful homes, able to travel wherever they want to, while the rest of the world's kind of locked down. People are saying, you guys aren't connected. You people who have been labeled influencers don't really understand my life. And I think that the divide is widening as a result. And what we're getting instead is what you're talking about, which are these true influencers that really live in my context, in my world, and therefore I trust.
A great example of what you're saying, Rose, is how many of these clothing influencers are still doing fashion hauls online right now when nobody wears, dresses and fancy clothes anymore. Everybody's in sweatpants. There's a real, a lot of people are just trying to keep it like business as usual because this is their livelihood and their income, and I get it, but there's more and more influencers in certain categories are really showing that this is kind of gross what they do, and I think some people, or a lot more people, are noticing this and starting to sort of second guess the whole concept of influence.
Maybe Ted could weigh in here, because I'm not reading this article or this study as being saying that influencers don't work. It's more that I'm reading it that advertising works as effectively and that together they work really, really well. So it doesn't seem to be challenging the validity of whether or not this is a good tactic to take. It just shows that there are other tactics that need to continue to be employed in order to get the best possible results. Now, Ted, am I wrong with that assumption? I mean, what did you read?
No, I think you're right. One of the quotes that I took out of it was, when you add even an incredibly weak amount of advertising to effectively neutralize the dominance of Mr. or Mrs. Popular. I think that's right. I mean, I think that, I'm drawing from not only my personal experience and what I do every day, but also from my 22-year-old twin daughters, who are, they are very much influenced by the group and not necessarily the singular person, the people that they follow on Twitter and Instagram. Those are the ones who provide that other opinion, or point of view. But I think as a group, their friend group really takes all of that into consideration, and they are, and I agree with everybody here that Glad's tipping point wasn't necessarily right. It may have been in 2001, but I think now it is more about that group mentality of what and how advertising and brands communicate what they're trying to, what they're either trying to sell or what they're trying to bring their fans into as part of their brand love.
Well, when you were quoting the article, you said something that's really interesting. It was that word neutralize. And you can neutralize the effect of Mr. Popular or Miss Popular with just a moderate amount of advertising. And what I take from that is it shows the importance of advertising as a defensive mechanism in case your competition goes out in the marketplace and gets a bunch of influencers and starts an influence campaign. That if you're constantly running ads as a bottom level, needed, required activity, you're going to protect yourself against possible erosion of your market because of the influencer campaign that someone else is doing.
But here's the thing, Bob. Paying influencers for their audience in itself is an advertisement. So, it's the nature of advertising is creating a piece of content, sharing it with the world, putting some money behind it to make sure you guarantee a certain number of eyeballs. The fact that you're paying an influencer to speak to their channel, to speak to their audience, it is an advertisement. The difference between what this person wrote and maybe common sense or general knowledge is you speak to anybody who's a professional word of mouth person versus someone who thinks they know word of mouth. Everybody knows you have to start this stuff, somewhere. Even the what's the name of the famous razor company that went crazy with their video?
Dollar Shave Club.
Dollar Shave Club. It started as a paid campaign. It wasn't just they put up on YouTube, cross their fingers and hope that somebody saw it. It's like, it is no difference. But as someone who's been doing word of mouth for a decade and more, everybody will tell you that you have to light the fire. Things don't happen by accident. They may, you may not be able to explain how it goes from, 250,000 views to 10 million views, but you can explain how you got to 250,000 every time, because that's how you get, it's like you always seed it a certain amount.
I always use the example of Rebecca Black in my ad classes for NYU. I mean, it's just like I'm always talking about the fact that, there's a paid component to everything. Rebecca Black, her mom paid a Chinese server farm to get the $1,000 to get the first million hits, and it just took off from there. And the same goes with like the Force ad that was so popular. The Force ad started off with a huge PR campaign, which cost a lot of money and a lot of effort to seed that campaign to get people excited about the commercial before it aired on the Super Bowl. So, I mean, it's just like, you're absolutely right, Saul. There is a paid component to everything that, when it comes to the viral nature of things. You need to employ that paid component at some point. I mean, I guess conceivably you could get away with not doing it and luck out, but that's going to be a 1,000,000-to-1 moonshot, wouldn't you say?
You go into a tier 1 brand and say, listen, we're going to try to get this thing to luck out. Get them to write a check. Well, for all the glowing praise of Clubhouse, there's also some considerable concern about its privacy policies and practices. Just a short list of some of the problems people are having. They say over and over again that the conversations are ephemeral, but they are recording conversations. What they're doing with those conversations, who knows, but they are recording them. They track way too broadly. They're sharing information with third parties. They're collecting too much personal contact data because they're sucking in everything from your contact address book, and there's no choice but to do so if you want to have invites. And there's no ability to delete the information that others share about you. So if you're in someone else's contact book, there's no way to get to that information. So, Dave, these are some big privacy concerns. Not surprising from a young startup trying to get some attention, but are these concerns real? And
considerable, or just people projecting their own fears into some kind of boilerplate privacy policy that every startup uses right at the beginning?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I've been enjoying Clubhouse myself. I've been I like messing around with it, but I don't really feel that, these revelations are going to hurt Clubhouse at all. I mean, look at Facebook and Twitter and so on, right? Like, we pay for these services with our privacy. And I think at this point, most people understand that, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't think it's a great thing. But when the terms of service are, with Clubhouse, for example, in this article, that first point about recording the conversations, and using those in the event of some sort of investigation or something like that. I mean, I can understand that. But as far as, capturing all of your contacts and that kind of thing, it's definitely a little sketchy. I was looking at some other stuff because I was curious about this, and I read in March 2019, there was a survey from Edison that suggested that Facebook had 15 million fewer users in the US compared to its base in 2017, and that these people were leaving because of privacy concerns, worries around echo chambers, wasting time, procrastinating, and of course the impact of social media on mental health. So, if this happened as a result of those things, if this drop in users on Facebook happened as a result of this, then I'm sure that this will probably happen eventually if Clubhouse doesn't change or isn't more transparent with their terms of service. So.
Thing is, though, if you read the article, even if you decide to delete the app from your phone, there's no way to actually delete your account unless you email them and jump through all these hoops, and they can still track you. Well, maybe they can't track you if you deleted it from your phone, but they're collecting a lot of crazy data, and they're probably selling it all out the back door, because they probably figure that they've got a pretty short lifespan for a product that really is kind of just COVID friendly, and what happens, in 6 months from now. But you say that, I don't know if you said this or not, I was kind of blanking out, but you say that this is mostly similar to a lot of other apps. I've never seen an app that makes it so hard to delete your account. Like almost every app, you maybe have to go through 2 screens or something, but there is still a button. You don't have to actually email and hope that they see it and hope they delete it, and maybe they take, 8 days or 10 days or whatever, but that is pretty shady. I haven't seen anybody be that bold with things.
But you did blank out a little because I'm saying, I wasn't actually, it's a flood or alert. Sorry, I'm under a tornado watch right now.
We're keeping our eyes out for.
Stop disaster dropping.
Just the huge in Nashville, that is sketchy that you can't delete it easily. But what you're saying, Saul, is a hypothetical. I think I have used accounts before, actually paid services, where I actually had to email them to close an account, which sucks, and it is kind of shady. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily, if you email them, I don't know of any cases, and the article didn't mention any cases of somebody deleting their Clubhouse account, or at least attempting to, and having a problem with it. So I'm just saying that, as far as these privacy concerns go, this is the case. This is the way we live with social networks now. This is part of the deal of using these free services. So I did see there was a study from 2019 from the Center for Data Innovation, and it said the vast majority of Americans, 80% of the study, would like online services to collect less of their data, but only 26% would be willing to pay a monthly subscription fee in exchange for privacy. So the truth is that most people are not willing to pay for these services. So it's, they'd rather pay with their privacy than with money. So I don't know what to say with that.
For me, the biggest concern out of all of these is the collecting of too much personal contact data. Collecting everything out of your contact address book, not just limiting itself to certain pieces of information, but just getting everything, is a dangerous walk for them. Rose, back me up here. You collect the data that you need. You don't collect all the data that's out there, because then you open yourself up to all kinds of legal liabilities as a result of any kind of hacking that goes on down the line. I mean, you want to have a plan for your data. You don't want to just go ahead and collect it all.
And, Saul is probably going to disillusion me in some way, shape, or form. So control yourself, Saul. But I was reading this and it got to the point where it says, and occasionally they'll just record the conversations. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. This from the household that does not allow Alexa or any of these, listening in device. I was like, no. That sort of thing, unless you are the call center support for a hospital or an insurance agency, you shouldn't be listening in. That's just how I feel. If people want to report things, they'll report things, but this just kind of occasional tapping in. Now, this may be the norm in the industry, and Saul, I'm now offering that up to you to completely disillusion me. But yeah, I mean, Bob, some of the things that they were noting, which were like standard data and then just observational data, I was like, no, this is making me very uncomfortable, and I'm glad I've never signed up for it.
Yeah, but it makes me wonder, like, I'm not defending them, by the way, but I'm doing the devil's advocate here. And like, what if somebody, as more and more users join Clubhouse? Because right now it's kind of cool. The people are interesting and things, but as these things increase, we all see what happens on Twitter with everybody using it. And what if somebody creates a room on Clubhouse and start planning to overtake the U.S. Capitol again, or plan some sort of terrorist event? You're saying you would want that recorded, right? You would want that to be able to help pinpoint, who was involved and so forth, wouldn't you?
See, but then you should be upfront about that. I just did a quick search on deleting Clubhouse account, and there's a Reddit subreddit folder of people basically complaining that they've tried to delete it and it's been 16 days and no response.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, but I agree. I don't want terrorism, going on and stuff there. But you have to, like, I can't record a phone call without telling the person on the other line we're being recorded. They should be upfront and honest about it. And I'm actually on board with you, Rose. I don't want to be recorded and stuff unless I know about it. Like, you want to take away all my personal freedoms, at least tell me so I can make an educated decision whether I want to be where this particular thing is taking place. But their promise was all about, real time, no scheduling, all these things. There was never a hint, like a thing. And my whole thing about all these, shady, T's and C's is that I think, anybody who's been a guest on the show knows this stuff goes on. They're savvy. Anyone who listens to the show probably knows this stuff goes on, and they're pretty savvy. But like, my parents would never know that they're being recorded or any of this stuff. I think for the most part, we take too much for granted that everyone thinks like we do. And I know that the general public, or at least I'm making an assumption and a general statement, that the general public just hands over their stuff and they don't know about the things that we're talking about, Dave, where you say we pay with our privacy. Mm-hmm. I posted this article on Facebook, and my caption was, if you're not paying for the product, you usually are the product. And I was amazed how many people had never heard that term before, but like, we've been using it on the show for 10 years talking about Facebook. So right. I didn't create it. I didn't make it up, but people were like, you're so smart. I never thought of it that way.
I think,
I don't think people get this whole privacy thing yet. And we're just like, we live it, so we get it. But I don't think kids get it. I don't think seniors get it. I think there's a lot of people who just aren't that immersed in it, that just don't get it, and they're surprised by this stuff.
All have different definitions of it as well, Saul. You know,
I think they really need to. What really needs to happen is legislation needs to happen, and laws need to be put into place, like actual real laws stating exactly what the rules are for these social networks. Because you're right, Saul. I mean, people don't know what's happening behind the scenes a lot of the time. And so I think it is important, but to leave it to Clubhouse, or any of the others to do this themselves. I mean, we all see what's happened numerous times with Facebook and the others. So it is sketchy, but it's interesting. You know, it would be interesting to see whether they could make those, you know, terms of service, or at least highlight those important points to see if Clubhouse would have the same adoption that it's had.
Ted, you were coming off mute, and I wanted to know, do you have anything you wanted to add to this? Because
I was just going to add that, you know, the term shady is, I believe in this one is right on, because while they do disclose that they are recording, it's under the guise of, to the point that I think, Dave, you were making earlier, of that it's because of people, you know, getting irate or say inappropriate things. That's why they're recording. But again, you know, I agree that folks don't read those, the elderly and the young, and quite frankly, again, to the point that was made earlier, so many people don't know what they're getting themselves into until it's too late.
You know, one big question that I think we all need to address before we get off this topic, which is, do these privacy concerns help or hurt their future relationship with sponsors and customers? And most of the concern from advertisers right now is about algorithm. It's about whether or not I'm being placed next to something that I don't want to be associated with, or somehow I'm supporting something that I don't want to support. These types of situations always come about because of the programmatic nature of advertising, etc. I don't see that being a future concern for these guys, given that. And, you know, advertisers are notable for not being concerned at all about privacy. You know, it's just like the more data, the better. I'm fine with it as long as they don't get caught. So, I mean, as long as they keep their noses clean and they collect all this data, will it affect the advertising potential for the platform?
It could do for the business itself. Like I remember I actually noted this following Cambridge Analytica, that incident with Facebook. Facebook lost $120 billion in market value in July 2018 from that scandal. But that was a pretty big scandal, and I don't know off the top of my head how that market value has changed since then.
I think they're doing okay.
Yeah, I think
I think so too.
As long as Mark can buy all the houses around him in the neighborhood to make sure no one can get close to his house, I think everything's fine in Facebook world. So I think we can go on from there. Well, another big story that came out this week is Twitter is testing its new Super Follows feature, which can only be described as their version of OnlyFans. And if you don't know what OnlyFans is, it's a service that allows content creators and influencers to place premium postings behind subscriber paywalls. Now, that all sounds great, Ted, but considering that OnlyFans is predominantly used by cam models and porn stars, do you believe this is a reach for that market? Or could Twitter be making a bigger play here, actually going for more types of creators than OnlyFans seems to be?
Right. You know, I think, well, obviously, maybe not obviously. I don't think OnlyFans wasn't originally set up for porn, but that's what it kind of turned into. And I don't, you know, and I don't believe that porn stars or wannabe porn stars use Twitter. So this was a way that a platform for them, right? So, you know,
let's caveat that. Let's caveat that because porn stars and wannabe porn stars and all kinds of people use Twitter. It's just that Twitter doesn't give them an opportunity to monetize it.
Correct.
Directly in the platforms.
There's a ridiculous amount of nudity on Twitter.
I totally get what you're saying. But I think in this particular case, the what Twitter is talking about is something that I don't believe that it's going to be that prevalent from a paying for content standpoint. But I do think there's going to be a certain percentage of folks that will try to take advantage of this. And you asked about brands like Golf Digest or Southern Living, you know, Tiger Woods giving exclusive lessons or
from his hospital bed yet.
Right, exactly.
Too soon. Too soon.
Sorry.
Yeah. Celebrity chefs, cooking with cooking videos. And I'm sure that there are individuals out there that will try to capitalize, but they won't really have I don't think they'll have the clout. And I don't think Twitter is going to make any money from it. I think those individuals probably could make some. But, I think that, when you look at the potential of the people that could be used or use this content to make money are the folks that are the number, top 20 Twitter followers, right? Is the people in the music industry. Outside of Barack Obama and Ronaldo, you've got, the Biebs and Katy Perry and Rihanna and T Swizzle and Lady Gaga and Ariana Grande, all in the top 20. And they could release, videos or albums or singles or, concerts that I think people would pay for. But outside of that, I haven't put a ton of thought into this, but that's my initial reaction.
So when I saw this headline, I didn't automatically go to like the OnlyFans model. What I thought it would be is kind of like more like the YouTube that lets, you tip streamers to get a response or a shout out in their video. And I think, there might be an interesting play for Twitter to do a pay for follow or pay for response from, like a tier 1 celebrity or something like that. But the idea of going to the OnlyFans model, which I know they're not specifically calling that or something, but, the idea of gated genitalia approach seems like it could make Twitter an even more unkind place to visit. The real knock against Twitter is that it's kind of an angry and violent, sort of melting pot at some times. And, all of a sudden you get a bunch of half aroused guys who aren't exactly happy with, the payout of what they paid for. It could just end up in more arguments and even a stranger place, So I think it's a real weird model for them. I get that they're trying to add value. They're trying to get more content creators to make it their first choice and stuff like that. But I think, I don't know, like it doesn't resonate with me. I think that, they should pay more attention to just getting more ad revenue and building up that thing. Because I think, it's, I don't know. I'm not all in on this idea.
It'd be interesting if they competed. I mean, because this sounds like competing with Patreon and that kind of model, right? And Patreon takes a percentage from the creators who use it to run Patreon. So Twitter would start making money. It would be I'd be curious to see what percentage or Twitter would take on whatever money that the creators or tweeters or whatever you want to call them would be making on that. And also
Patreon also gives you a destination to put all your stuff and draw people to, and it lives there forever and it's exclusive. This seems like this one tweet and then it gets buried underneath all the others and stuff like that.
Well, they also mentioned in the article about, I think it was, I forget the name, but it was like a club or something, like a private group, kind of like Facebook groups. But the problem with that, I think from Twitter's point of view would be, I mean, from a user, I think that'd be kind of cool. Although I like Twitter lists for that too. But for a private Twitter group, like Facebook groups, the problem though is if you remember with Facebook groups, when they started, there was a Facebook groups app, which made it way better to be able to keep up with the groups. And I found all the best engagement and all the best stuff happening for me personally was in private groups on Facebook. But that took away from what was happening on the news feed, and Facebook's like, hold on a second. So then they like got rid of the app. At least that's why I figured they did that. So for Twitter to create, these pods, these private groups, I think they would find out pretty quickly that suddenly the main timeline on Twitter is a lot less active, and that wouldn't be good for new users and investors and all that stuff. So I'm not sure this is such a great idea.
Do we know that that's what happens with this platform? I mean, it's just like, you're you're paying for getting behind a paywall to see some kind of exclusive content, but that doesn't mean that your comments on that content aren't being made public throughout the process. So, I mean, it may not depress the Twitter timeline at all. You know, you can have lots of conversations going on. It's just you have to pay for some content. And I saw, when I read about this first, and maybe Rose, you could weigh in on this, whether you think this is a good idea or not, but it occurred to me that this is a great opportunity for brands to work with content creators and say, look, you know, you would normally set up a paywall for this. We'll pay the paywall at such and such a rate, and then you can make it free to your subscribers. And this is, you know, kind of like a sponsored by. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, if it was being given as a gift like that, I might be more receptive to it. I don't know. You know, Saul, you brought up at the very beginning of this discussion that 93% of kind of all sharing and influence is done outside of the internet. And it's just like so many of these guys are just trying to, hey, let's do a club, let's do a group, you know, and it's like, enough already. All of this stuff, I'm managing so much crap now that, you know, where is my real life? It's like Alice in Wonderland falling down the rabbit hole on this stuff. And it's so tiresome now. And with Twitter, I'm just getting the sense you guys are, you know, do you know who you are? Twitter, do you know what you want to be when you grow up? Because you always seem to be, you know, grasping at these new elements. But to directly address your question, Bob, yeah, I think that if I was being gifted something from a brand, I would go, yeah, thank you very much. That's pretty cool. And I've got limited access to this special thing because of the commitment that I've shown you as a brand. You know, the American Express, you know, it has its privileges, fine and dandy. But, you know, in other ways, it just starts feeling like this construct that people are trying to force down my throat.
Can I also say that I'm disappointed in all of you on the panel because I didn't even get a snicker or a guffaw when I said gated genitalia.
I was there with you. It was just on me. Okay. I was
Thank you. I knew I could count on you.
Yeah, it's the
I heard a bunch of thunder when you said it. So.
God spoken.
Well, a new study for our final topic, I wanted to get into a really interesting part of Gen Z, because Gen Z consumers pretty much think that gender binaries are outdated. Over 50% of them are saying that, you know, the gender norms are outdated and that we need to drop them entirely, which may be the reason that research like this has led, research like this has led Hasbro to remove the Mr. from Mr. Potato Head. Now, the question is, does this go a little far, or is it timely and good for business? Saul, why don't you go first and kind of give me your thoughts. Why take the Mr. off of Mr. Potato Head? Does this advance the cause of transgender people and non-binary individuals out there who are looking for recognition and looking for some kind of toys, I guess, that represent who they are and who they want their children to be?
So I'm gonna say that I'm gonna say this is nothing more than a PR stunt, and I'll explain. When I first read the story or first heard the story, it was on all the news. It was on radio. They talked about it on Howard Stern, I think, and I thought to myself, well, wow, this is a bad business decision because they're going to go from 2 SKUs to 1 SKU and cutting sales in half. But when I actually got to reading the article, I realized the only change they're actually making is dropping the word Mr. and Mrs. from the packaging, but they're still selling the 2 figures exactly as they were before the change. So if you unpack that, they got a ton of press for not actually making a change. They're just kind of riding a trend. I believe their heart's in the right place, but if they really want to make a friend or take a stand with the LGBTQ, I have to use my fingers, make sure I don't miss a letter. If they really want to make a stand with the LGBTQ community, why not go the Barbie route and release a collector version that is gender neutral, has non-binary hair, and a chest binder, bandage, or some things that actually speak to the community instead of just saying. And when I say they remove,
well, first of all, Barbie is Mattel and this is Hasbro, but that's beside the point.
No, but I'm saying Barbie.
But I get your point.
Versions of Barbie. There's Dentist Barbie and Dr. Barbie and Car Salesman Barbie. Like there's a million different Barbies. So that's what I meant by the Barbie route. But they didn't actually even remove Mr. and Mrs. from the packaging. No, they just made it like
smaller.
Really smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found this to be fascinating, actually. I thought, and Saul, you totally nailed it. It is a complete PR stunt. So I started reading up on like Potato Head or Mr. Potato or whatever. But in September of 2020, so last year, they partnered with Happy Socks and they created some Potato Head themed socks, right? And then in October, the next month, they turned him green, and they had like presumably like to jump on the green bandwagon. They had a green Mr. Potato Head at the time. So this doesn't surprise me at all. And I suppose it does help to normalize the cause, right? But the truth is, I think it's totally a marketing ploy to remind people what Potato Head is, because I don't think most people even think of it much anymore. And in fact, I went on Google Trends and searched Potato Head and found since 2004, and it was like flatlining pretty much right up until now, and it's spiking. Everybody's searching for it. And I also noticed that Hasbro's share value has increased by a couple of dollars after the announcement last week. So I took a look at that as well. So it's working. Whatever they're trying to achieve is working.
Yeah, and I agree. I think the PR stunt is dead on, because when you talk about furthering the cause of transgender people, I'm not sure how active the 4 to 12-year-old age group is in the cause. And
exactly.
Outside of that, it's what I found funny too is I was reading the article that someone had tweeted when they first brought this out or first released this that Hasbro should remove the BRO from their name and just be Has. To be more in line with the cause. But again, PR stunt and flatlining sales. I think this was just a way for them to stay in the game.
I wonder what the trans community feels about this.
I think it would be an interesting question to ask them because, I think back to, do you guys remember the Ken in the mesh T-shirt?
Yeah.
It's one of the great collectibles by the LGBTQ community. And, it's almost like I wish that they had done something more along the lines of that, where they're not jumping up and down and saying, hey, we took the gender out of it, because you didn't. The interesting thing in my mind is Potato Head is all about the child as the creator of that form, right? They're given this kind of naked form, and they put on the ears and they put on all of this, and so it was already LGBTQ applicable, because you could have had a Mr. Potato Head with lipstick, for crying out loud. With the lipstick lips. So, but I think that they're probably going to, have a lot of purchases within the LGBTQ community just laughing at it. So, because they'll go, oh, this is hilarious and buy it. But I don't think any of them really think, oh my gosh, this is such an incredible commitment to our cause. They'll know it for what it is. People making money out of their identities, which not necessarily right on. If you want to do something really good for the community, why don't you give money to the Trevor Project?
Right.
Yeah, or release Mr. Potato Head with I don't know what it's called, but whatever, like drag queens used to tie their penis down, make like an accessory for that in the kit. That'll go over big.
It's not tied, it's taped.
It's called tape.
Exactly. And my God, it's genitalia night for you tonight, isn't it, Saul? There's something you want to share, sweetie?
Every night is genitalia night. I've been in my house too long. Do you know how long it's been since I touched a woman?
And on that note, it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do their shameless plug of the week, starting with Ted Aurelius. You can find him at iwco.com. That's where he is the vice president and head of marketing services. So tell us, what's going on in your world, Ted? What would you like to promote?
I would like to promote the fact that as a performance improvement agency, we're growing. We're seeing, which, as a direct response person at heart, it's great to see more and more brands really focusing on using data and analytics to help drive response and improve their marketing. And we've actually seen an uptick not only in that, but as well as we've hired in several different areas, from creative to strategy to data analytics, and we've actually starting to build up our Hispanic marketing unit. So that is my shameless plug of the week.
And, if I can put in a plug for Ted, great person, somebody who is very knowledgeable and one of the best people in the direct marketing space. So you definitely want to talk to him if you have a direct marketing need. So give him a call. Next up, we've got Rose Cameron. You can find her on the internet somewhere, LinkedIn, email. Still no website, but she's doing amazing work. She doesn't need a website. She's getting all the work. So tell us what's going on in your world. Rose, what would you like to promote?
Baby, thank you. Well, I've got a couple of call-outs. Number one, just everyone, Martin Lindstrom, who I work with extensively globally, has just come out with his new book, The Ministry of Common Sense: How to Eliminate Bureaucratic Red Tape, Bad Excuses, and Corporate BS. And I just want everyone to know I had a hand in the writing of that headline, that title for the book. You probably note it, Bob, because of the level of profanity that's in it. So that's one call out. The other call out is I just wanted to thank my community here in Bowlesburg, Pennsylvania, and the extended community I have through my client MDI of independent retailers across the Southeast. I recently had a loss, and they have been absolutely incredible in support of me, and I just wanted to thank them in the most public way possible. So thank you, guys. I really appreciate your support.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So definitely check out Rose's. I can't send them anywhere to check her out, but definitely if you can get in touch with Rose, get in touch with her. She's amazing. I'm gonna come back to you. Dave's got his storm blowing up, and he might have to jump off into the bomb shelter soon. So Dave Delaney, you can find him at futurefourth.com. That's the home of his consultancy. So tell us, Dave, what would you like to promote?
Well, guess what, Bob? I'm no longer a recovering podcaster. I have launched a new podcast that I'd like to invite everybody to check out, and it's called the Nice Podcast. And it's a leadership podcast for leaders who want to improve how nice they are to themselves, to the stakeholders in their communities as well. So it's a fun podcast with a lot of great interviews, and I'm just getting started. So drop by nicepodcast.co. That's nicepodcast.co, and take a listen. Let me know what you think.
And if the tornado bell goes off, if the warning siren comes on, just go to your safe space. Don't wait for us. But hopefully we can keep you for the rest of the show. Last but not least, Saul Colt. You can find him at theideaintegration.com. That's the home of the Idea Integration Company, the consultancy where he is the word of mouth expert. So tell us what's going on in your world. What would you like to promote?
So Bob, just that, been doing word of mouth since 2008, worked with some of the most recognizable brands in the world, as well as 100 or so brands you'd probably never heard of until they started working with us. We have room right now for one project. So if you guys are interested, and obviously if you've ever listened to the show or at least listened to this episode, you kind of know what sort of stuff I'm going to suggest. We do campaigns that are a little bit more on the edgier side. We don't, we're shameless with that sort of thing. We're not for everybody, but the people we are for, we do some of the best work in the world, and that's everything. Please reach out if you have any questions or just anything. You can find me at theideaintegration.com. Had to think about that for a second.
Well, at least we got it out there twice. Theintegration.com. So for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me. And of course, you can find out how to advertise on this program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it is time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. First up, the fair. Rose, Freedom Mom finally gets to show their breastfeeding ad on TV during the Golden Globes. This will be the first time on national television that a lactating breast will be shown. Finally, we're going to see breasts used for what they're supposed to be used for.
Yep, exactly. And my God, I watched that ad and I started having like flashbacks. 20 years ago, I was doing that with my daughter, and I'm like, holy God, yeah, that was horrible. That was really, really horrible. It was just, yeah, you're totally exhausted, and you have this this sucking parasite on you, and you're pumping and all that. And women need help. And I am so glad that Frida's out there and they're doing a good product, and, good on them. This is important. I mean, if men can have all this prostate stuff and women can be embarrassed by douching, oh my gosh, I remember as a young adolescent girl watching douching ads and dying, just curling up inside and dying. We need lactating women and children latching on more ads. I think they're fabulous.
No, that's wonderful.
The other thing was, so I saw the ad too. I thought it was very powerful. Yeah. The thing that I thought was most interesting, ad aside, was the controversy of whether or not you could even show this when at most award shows like the Oscars or the Golden Globes, where it's actually being featured, you see far more women's breasts in some of the outfits that they were making such a big deal about.
Absolutely. And that the one that they had kicked out, Saul, that they hadn't allowed on, I can't even remember what programming it was just somebody sitting on the toilet. And I thought, didn't we get away with that with Archie Bunker? And the great, flushing toilet debate. Come on, people. The women's bodies, this is how they are properly used, by the way.
The ad's great. And it's interesting because like for this, I'm the type of person that watches the Super Bowl only for the ads. And now that they're all on YouTube before the Super Bowl, I don't have to watch the Super Bowl. But I found this was interesting too, because this ad was getting so much buzz around it. And first of all, I thought it was brilliant as well. But I found it also interesting that it is getting so much buzz around the Golden Globes, right? So that more people are going to maybe watch the Golden Globes. I read that in 2004, the Golden Globes drew 27 million viewers, and last year it was 18.3. So I guess anything that gets people talking and watching the awards is a great idea for the show itself. So I think this, quote unquote controversy probably does help the show too.
That's an interesting point. Well, the fail of the week, Ted, I don't know why this one surprised me. I mean, Google Incognito, you think, okay, it's incognito. No one's tracking me while I'm in incognito. I can browse the web anonymously. That is not exactly the case. Apparently, Google is collecting data in incognito mode, which is not a kosher thing to do. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's another... I think we talked about it a little bit before the show. It's just another, thing that Google has done that, has all kinds of wrong written all over it. And I just think that, at some point, they've got to get called to the carpet on some of these things. And this is a perfect example of kind of like the bait and switch of, oh, no, don't look over there, look over here, and follow the shiny object, and don't, we're not doing what we're saying we're not doing, or are we doing that? Again, I think it's we need to start looking into this a lot more closely than just reading about it in articles.
Yeah.
If you need proof that incognito is not real, go watch a few videos on Pornhub while in incognito mode, wait a day, and check out your Wish recommendations.
Okay, is that a
Keeping
challenge?
in the theme of genitalia.
Is that a challenge for us all? Is that homework? Is that what we're supposed to go home and do?
Homework.
Well,
I'll take it on.
well, the foul of the week I'm going to give to Amazon, actually, but it's just like Twitch, which is an Amazon subsidiary, pulled the Amazon union busting ads, which is really kind of funny, Dave, when you think about it, because it's just like the parent company is all about busting the unions and trying to convince people not to join unions throughout their organization of warehouse workers and delivery people, etc. Meanwhile, Twitch, a subsidiary, goes, not going to do this. We're gone. We're out. It's just like it violates our user policy.
But not a moment too soon. I mean, a lot of people saw the ad. So I think, yeah, if nothing else from the ad from the article, the streamers have really come away wanting to be able to choose specific ads or, on Twitch for a long time. And so I think from this, maybe they'll be able to choose the maybe not the specific ads, I don't know, but at least categories of ads, so that they can choose, what types of ads that will appear on their channels. So, but yeah, wow.
Here's a fun fact. The reason Jeff Bezos got a divorce was because someone told him it was a union.
Oh, that's a bad one. Oh my gosh, that's so bad. Well, have a suggestion for this list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. And that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
You know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.